everybody, and welcome to the Everything Voiceover Podcast. My name is Justin D. Torres. The Everything Voiceover Podcast is brought to you by the Voice Realm, where only professional voice actors are listed. There's been some great stuff happening at everythingvoiceover.com, especially our YouTube page where we're doing the pay-to-play shootout, where I basically give you the stats of how many auditions I've went out for on a weekly basis to give you a sense of what the good pay-to-play sites are and the bad pay-to-play sites are as far as numbers go, regardless of business practices and everything like that, because to be honest, everyone's out to make a buck anyway, and how they do it is how they do it. So I'm not going to be judgmental on that because that's how the system works right now, and that's how it is. So on today's Everything Voiceover Podcast, I wanted to talk about managing expectations. And here's the reason why. Because I recently saw a post, and usually these are post-based, because I get inspired every time I see posts on Facebook. But this guy talked about how he was trying out for the pay-to-play sites, and he did about like 100 or so auditions, and a couple of them got listened to, and a couple of them got thumbs up, and he was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm not getting any jobs. I've done so many auditions, and I'm not getting anything. So I wanted to create a video called Managing, a podcast based on managing expectations, because I think people, especially if this guy really understands that, he needs to understand how to manage his expectations before he goes on to figure out that he wants to be a voiceover artist, because especially if he was an old school radio guy who used to get jobs every week or anything like that. The voiceover atmosphere now is very different, and I've delved into the pay-to-play sites section. I know a lot about it. It's my bread and butter 90% of the time, and my repeat clients are from those sites and whatnot. So I know how it really works. So the people need to realize that these are grinds, and that's a really good word for it, a grind. And it could be pay-to-play sites. It could be the grind of marketing, of cold calling, the grind of setting up a studio and resetting up a studio and then redoing a studio, and the money not rolling in off the bat. That's going to happen. So, it's fundamental that you manage your expectations before you start your journey. Now, you need to realize that this is a learning process. If you're an actor in any way, that doesn't necessarily give you the skills of a voice actor. In the same realm as a stage actor, should probably go to a class or two before going out for film auditions. There's going to be a skill involved, and people seem to think that voiceover is just something that you can do, and it is something you can do. But if you want to be successful at it, you need to take classes, and you need to constantly be evolving. Now, this may sound a little bit negative, but I promise you that at the end of this voiceover podcast, I will give you the positives and hopefully inspire you to get moving on your auditions and get moving on and not feel like you're trudging through it and grinding through it as much as possible. But let's start off with the negatives. Number one, you are not going to be perfect for every job. Even Morgan Freeman is not perfect for every job. He can only do a couple of jobs, and if I was Morgan Freeman and if I was on a pay-to-play site, I would probably only audition for a couple of jobs a year. But until you figure out what you are good at, you should go out for as many as you think you are good at. And you will always lose that job to a person whose quality of sound is more liked by the client. Now you can take this two ways. You can delete the audition and just move on to the next audition. That's perfectly fine. Or you could just do it your way and call it practice. Now, would you do a Morgan Freeman impersonation? No. Maybe do it some way that makes you feel like you're a father or something like that, or an old man or an older person, some kind of sense of wisdom. And then just call it a practice run. I'm telling you, if this guy did 100 auditions and 20 of them were for urban and you don't sound urban, those are 20 lost auditions that you could have not done, or if they were done, then he'd have to realize, I'm probably not going to get those, and be okay with it. So he only really did 80 auditions because those are definitely practice. And if you do pull them, that's even better. If you pull someone and be like, I was looking for an urban male, but this really sounds good, and I ended up using him, then great. There's something about you that surpassed the concept of what they thought, and that's great. Now, here's a huge misconception. If you want to keep track of your audition to job ratio early on in your career, you will give up. It will make you give up very quickly. Or worse, it'll make you make worse and worse decisions. Now, Joe Zija, he is the voice of Star Fox right now, and he's probably one of the higher end voiceover talents, especially in the pay-to-play arena, because he's one of the only ones that still says that he does use pay-to-play sites as well, but he's also union, and FICOR, I saw it in a podcast, really great podcast. I'll try and put a link up to it. But, he says he used to do 80 auditions per day. And now he does about 20 to 30 auditions per day, and lots of them are agent auditions. And there goes the siren. And they are specifically for him. So think about that. He's got like 10 private auditions where they already kind of want you. And he's already getting those things for him today. It's like, so if he's doing 40 auditions per day, and this guy's talking about 100 auditions, and he's having problems with it, and he's definitely not someone like Joe Zija or myself who does 40 or 50 auditions. He's never done it before in his life. To think that he was going to automatically come out and be competitive at a percentage base is crazy. And he probably won't last as long as everyone else, because this is a grind. And here's another thing. You may think there is something wrong with your voice if you're not booking early and often. But there isn't. There's nothing wrong with your voice, unless, of course, you have a speech impediment, which someone should tell you as soon as possible. But the thing that happens when you think something's wrong and you're trying to, and suddenly you're like, oh, this is 101 auditions, I better get this next one. Desperate actors don't do good auditions. They just don't. And they also make bad investments. They might be like, oh, maybe I'll get a demo from this guy online, because he's going to give me a cheap demo, and then that'll be even more useless. They might want to get the best mic, but they haven't done any soundproofing of the room. They haven't tested it. They don't know how to edit, and they bought a $1,200 mic, and they get the higher end memberships that are thousands of dollars, and they'll get more auditions for better jobs, but they won't pull anything. You need to realize that there's a process to all that, or worse, force your way into the union. There's ways to get into there were ways to get into SAG-AFTRA before they closed it down, and there probably still is a way to just pay your way onto SAG-AFTRA. But if you're not a bankable quality voice, then you're putting the cart way before the horse, and it's not going to be an investment that's going to pay off. I mean, there are unicorns out there, and you may very well be a unicorn, but I'm not going to bet on you being a unicorn. I'd rather give you the realistic perspective that you're going to have to work hard to get good at something. Now, here's a list of reasons why you won't get a job that is entirely out of your hands. So if you think of it along these lines, like, hey, every time you lose a job to somebody else or it doesn't happen, just be like, it's entirely out of my hands. These are the reasons. Number one, it ends up not being a job. 50% of the jobs, especially in the pay-to-play site realm, may not even end up being jobs. Maybe even 40 or 60%. Who knows? Your voice is too young or too old. Can't change that. If you don't sound like a baby, then you're probably not going to get the job. Your accent is from a different location. Sometimes people say I have a California accent, which is kind of there, but it's not my ethnicity. It's not anything. It's like, and the other things, you might not have the right ethnicity for it. They might be asking for a specific type of California sound or a surfer, or they want a specific type of New York accent. And if you're not, and all these things about being young and too old, those are all put into it. And they also, here's a big thing, they decide to work with someone they already know at the end. They're like, I just tried out, there's 100 people went out for the job, and we're just going to use Joe. And that's going to happen. 90% of the time, they want to work with someone they just already want to. They're just going to put it out there for some kind of hope that there's someone who's going to blow their minds, and then if nothing happens, then screw it. And the other thing is, like, you might have a speech impediment that you don't know about. There's certain words that I don't do very well at all, and that's probably the sound of my voice doesn't really work on certain things. And here's a list of reasons why you don't get a job that is in your hands. These are things that you can think about and ways that you can fix them. Number one, you're not as good of a voiceover actor as everyone else. And the way to get around that is to do in-class training, not online. You want to train with voiceover teachers. You want to train with really good coaches. You want to train with casting directors, and you want them to really listen to who you are and what you do. And we want you to critique you, see how good you are, see if they can get you better. 90% of the time you take an in-class voiceover training, it ends up being helpful in at least 1 to 2 or 3 ways. Whether you come out with a piece of information or you come out with an idea of how to take on auditions. If you're the auditioning type of actor, which the Everything Voiceover Podcast is pretty much gauged towards the auditioning actor, voiceover actor, then try and come into a class with a sense of, hey, I'm going to train, and I want them to come out with some audition notes on how to be a better auditioner. And then make sure that you tell that to the teacher and make sure that they try and help you gauge what you need to do to get better. Number 2, your studio isn't good enough yet. You maybe it's not the sound is bad, so you're going to have to move your studio around. That's just something you're going to have to do. Maybe soundproof it a little, maybe put a bunch of acoustic blankets up. These are all things you're going to have to do eventually. Do you have to do it right now? No, you don't have to do it right now. But these are just possibilities that you got to think about. So like, if you're taking a lot of classes, maybe it's your studio a little bit. The other thing is your microphone isn't good enough. You can upgrade to a mid-level microphone or a professional level microphone. Now, I'll tell you one thing. If you haven't done any classes, in-person classes, and you don't intend on taking any in-person classes, then your performance might not be up to the level where you're going to, I wouldn't invest into a large professional microphone until you've invested into the in-class training. That's definitely something you should do. Here's another thing. You're bidding too high. Are you bidding at the higher end of the spectrum? Especially if you are someone with 0 stars or you're someone who has never done a voiceover in a world in your life, then, you probably should be bidding on the low end. I'm sorry. And also, here's another thing. You may sound like you want the job or that you're angry. You need to realize that this is practice. And if you sound like you really want the job and you're like, oh, it's 100 jobs, I need to get this next one. I need to get this one job, then that is going to come through. It's going to seep through your performance, and it's going to make you not. It's going to ruin that audition. So instead of taking it as a pressure, you got to take it as, hey, this is practice. I'm going to do 20 auditions today, see if they shooting in the dark, and hopefully we get something. And if you do get something, then you can start working, being like, okay, this guy likes us like this. How can I kind of make it's like those? That's something I should keep an eye out for. These type of jobs might be good for me. Maybe I should keep an eye out for those. And if you're a newbie and you're taking the pay-to-play route, think about it. You're up against me. You're up against Joe Zija. He's Star Fox. You're up against some of the best people in the industry right there who have a studio, who have done it forever. So, so I don't take it personally. It may make me feel better. It's like I could say, oh yeah, that's probably someone who beat me is probably someone like Joe, and he's great. So go beat me. Absolutely. I wish I could get every job that I go out for, but I don't. The jobs I get, a lot of the jobs I get end up being repeat clients, and that's the truth. Now, here's a good time to say that the Everything Voiceover Podcast is brought to you by the Voice Realm, where only professional voice actors are listed. And make sure to head to our YouTube page and check out our pay-to-play sites, where we pay-to-play shootout, where we have information about Bodalgo, Voices.com, Voice Realm, and Voice 123. And some big things have happened in Voice 123 that people got to listen to, especially if they are current users or they're people who left, like me. And I am back onto Voice 123 temporarily. Hopefully things have changed. All right, now that we did all the negative stuff about voiceover and how, there's a million reasons why you don't get a job that are in your hands and out of your hands, how do you manage your expectations? Here's a couple of mantras you can tell yourself over and over again that will help you manage those feelings of, I'm not getting any of these jobs. Number 1, every job listened to, you've had a chance at. You got heard. Give yourself a high five. You got heard, man. Someone took the time to at least listen to your name and some of your performance. That's good. That's something that doesn't happen with all these bigger jobs. You may have 100 and then it goes to an agent, and then an agent deletes half of them and then gives out only the ones that they think are good enough. So you got heard. You had a chance at it. Good job. Every job that you got a thumbs up for, or were called back, or shortlisted, or you got 5 stars in your audition but you didn't get, you got liked. You got give yourself a huge high five. Good job. Good job. just say like, oh, and if that job is still available, you got a chance at it. You got a good chance at it. So that's great. Now, every job that got completed without you knowing about it, think about it this way. They didn't get your audition on time. You should have been a little bit faster. But think about it this way. You got to practice audition. So as time goes on, you're going to get better at auditioning. You'll get quicker at it. You'll get quick on the draw. Then hopefully you'll get a better chance at the job. Now, for every job that is laid dormant for 2 months or more, screw it. It was a practice audition. It took 2 minutes out of your day. You're better at auditioning, editing, and performing because of it. Do I want those 2 minutes back for every audition that I've done? No. That's a lot of time, but I do not regret a single audition that I did. Now, for every job that got completed by another talent, and they listened to you, good for the other guy. Congratulations, you got the job. I'm happy for you. Say that. Eventually you'll get that kind of job. If you start feeling envious or hateful of your fellow voiceover talents, then, that's your deal. Stop it. We're all in that 80 to 100 voiceover talent range who are going out for the same job. It's as long as these people are hiring, that's a good thing, because if they use this site or they use this agent and it actually turns into a job, they'll use this again. And guess what? You're in that roster. You're in that pay-to-play site. So you'll have another chance at the next job. And every job that you thought you had and you didn't because of anything, like they messaged you and they're like, oh, can you be cheaper? And the job fell through, or they were like, oh, this job, the client didn't like it anymore and they're going to go with another talent, but we really like you. It's okay. They liked you. They will still like you. And if it's a cheap job and they're just a client that doesn't want to pay talent, well, then you don't want to work for those guys. So it's great. You figured it out. And it's always a success if you come close to getting a job. And then if you get a job, congratulations. You're one of the top X% to actually get the jobs. Now, here's a statistic that I will tell you that will give you a sense of what I go through. I have done over 13,000 auditions. And only 484 jobs just through voices. 484. That's a 3.7% booking ratio. And I booked much less when I started out. Much less. So a majority of that percentage is probably going to be over the last year or two. So what was I doing in those first 2 years? Less than 3.7%. Now, I do not regret any one of those auditions. I don't regret the time that I don't regret when I bid low at the start. I don't regret bidding high now. The key to progress is change. Just do 1,000 auditions and check your numbers. I've usually told people, do 100 auditions, but if this guy's already freaking out about 100, do 1,000 auditions. Give yourself, let's see, if I'm looking at like 40 a week. Yeah, spend about a year. Do 1,000 auditions. If you get say 10 or 5 to 10 jobs, you're doing good. If you get zero, then you need to probably figure you need to do some improving. And that could be at the number, and if you look at the back, that could be any number of the things. Take more in classes, change your studio, upgrade your mic. Maybe bid less. If you're bidding on the high end of the spectrum and you're not and you have not established yourself as a talent, then don't do it. Now when I started, I bid low. I also did a trilogy of audiobooks for $85 per finished hour. That ended up being like $5 an hour. But I'm grateful for it. I don't regret it. I don't regret it for 1 second. At 1,000, once you hit 1,000 auditions, try and figure out what you need to improve. We're talking classes. Definitely, if you haven't started taking classes, you need to take classes as soon as possible. And in-person classes, not these crazy online classes, because it's so much easier for them to do classes online. You want to take one in person, because then you can see a person and feel what it's like to audition. Or you may want to upgrade your tech or upgrade more, get more opportunities, whether by contacting agents, go to pay-to-play sites, or marketing. Now, here's a little bit of understanding that I want people to take into their brain. If you're successful early, it doesn't mean you'll be successful forever. If you're struggling early, it doesn't mean you'll struggle forever. The talents who survive the peaks and the valleys and keep going, they stay in the voiceover career. Your struggle is your journey. And the success is only good if you look back and see what you had to do to get there, you know? Change is growth for a voiceover actor. Always learn, always evolve, and you'll be great. Now, next week, when I started making this podcast, I started thinking to myself, if there was like a voiceover university, what would it partake? What would it look like for everyone? And I kind of started thinking about what the first year and the second year and the third year would be like. And I'm going to put that up as a podcast, next week's podcast, because I was really thinking hard about it. And I was like, oh yeah, this is probably what people should know, that if you're going to do a voiceover university, this would probably be what it would be. So check it out next week. And, just a little bit of extra for the people who are listening out there. It's going to be a process. And if you do well early, that's great. If people are doing well, I'm like, that's awesome. Don't expect it to be doing that forever. All right. You may have a month or two where things don't happen. And I'm sorry to say that. Me, I recently had a week where I only had one big job. And I'm like, okay, got to start pushing at different directions, And there was a week where I had 5, 6, 7, 8 jobs. That's great. But there's going to be good weeks. There's going to be bad weeks. And, as a person who considers voiceover as a career, that's different than someone who also tries to do another job, So give yourself a break. Manage your expectations. This is going to take time. And the more you do it as a daily basis, the more beneficial it's going to be. If you just go once a week on Sunday night and you take care of 60 auditions, you're going to burn yourself out. It is more important that you do a couple of auditions a day on a consistent basis, because that's going to be the career that you want. If you did 5 auditions a day, and if you were signed up for a pay-to-play site and you did 5 auditions a day, that's a good, even if there was 20 on there, I'm just going to do 5. That's good. You've managed your expectations correctly because you're trying to commit to the process of practicing. Now, I know it's going to be hard out there. Be patient with yourself. It's hard for everybody. If I could talk to the guy who said he gave up at 100 auditions, I'd be like, I'm sorry, but I would have given up. I should have given up a long time ago, but I didn't. And now I'm a career voiceover actor who's paying rent and eating and going on vacations every now and then because of my voiceover. So, thank you guys so much for listening. This has been the Everything Voiceover Podcast. My name is Justin D. Torres. The Everything Voiceover Podcast is brought to you by the Voice Realm, where only professional voice actors are listed. Be sure to head on over to everythingvoiceover.com or go and head to our YouTube channel or follow us on Everything V. Take care. Have a good one.